The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, painting the streets of her small town in warm shades of orange and gold. Maria was rushing through the grocery store, her shopping list clutched tightly in her hand. She had just finished a long day at work and wasn't really thinking about anything but getting home. That's when she noticed him. An elderly man stood near the checkout, his hands trembling slightly as he counted coins from a worn leather pouch. His cart was full, but it was clear he didn't have enough money to cover everything. Maria froze for a moment, feeling a pang in her chest. There was something in his eyes, a mix of worry, embarrassment, and quiet dignity, that made her heart ache. She had no idea that a simple act of kindness that evening would change both of their lives in ways she couldn't even imagine. Before we dive deeper into this heartwarming story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Join our community here at Kindness Story Hub, where we celebrate the small acts that make the world a better place. Maria quickly walked over to the elderly man. "Excuse me," she said gently, "I can cover the rest for you." He looked up at her, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "Oh. I couldn't," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden," Maria insisted with a smile. "Everyone deserves a little help sometimes." She paid for the groceries, watching as the relief washed over him like sunlight breaking through clouds. He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached his eyes, and Maria felt something stir inside her, a mix of joy and quiet pride in being able to help. The man, whose name was George, invited her to walk with him to his car. Along the way, he told her a little about his life. George had been widowed for several years and lived alone in a small apartment. His children lived out of state and couldn't visit often. Lately, he had been struggling to make ends meet on his fixed income, often skipping meals so he could pay his bills. Listening to his story, Maria's heart broke. Here was a man who had spent his life working hard, raising a family, and yet, at this moment, needed a stranger's kindness just to put food on the table. "Thank you," George said quietly as they reached his car. "I don't know how to repay you." Maria shook her head. "You don't need to repay me," she said. "Just promise me you'll let yourself accept kindness when you need it. That's enough." They parted ways, but Maria couldn't shake the image of George's grateful eyes. That night, she went home, thinking about how small gestures could ripple into something much bigger than herself. Little did she know, George had also been thinking about her. A few days later, Maria received a small envelope in the mail. Curious, she opened it to find a handwritten note from George. It read, "Dear Maria, your kindness the other day reminded me that there are still good people in the world. I wanted to do something to say thank you, even if it's just a little. Please know you've made a difference in my life." Inside the envelope was a photograph, a simple snapshot of George smiling in his kitchen, holding a loaf of bread he had bought with the groceries Maria had helped him with. Maria felt tears prick her eyes. She realized that this simple act had not only helped him physically but had reminded him of hope, dignity, and human connection. In that moment, she understood something profound. Kindness doesn't just touch the person receiving it, it transforms the giver as well. The story didn't end there. Inspired by Maria's gesture, George decided to pay it forward. He began volunteering at the local food pantry, helping others who were struggling with groceries, bills, or just a friendly conversation. Slowly, he began forming new connections, and his sense of isolation began to fade. Maria, too, found herself more attuned to opportunities for kindness in her daily life, holding doors, paying for coffee for strangers, even just offering a smile or a kind word to someone having a tough day. One evening, about a month after the grocery store incident, Maria ran into George at a local community center. He had been helping organize a small holiday food drive for families in need. Seeing him surrounded by people who were grateful for his help, Maria felt a wave of warmth. "You've been busy," she said with a smile. George chuckled. "I've been learning from the best," he replied. "You reminded me that small acts can have big effects." The two of them laughed, and Maria realized that kindness doesn't need to be grand or heroic. It doesn't have to make headlines or go viral on social media. Sometimes, the most powerful gestures are the quiet ones: paying for someone's groceries, listening when someone needs to talk, or simply showing up with an open heart. As the days turned into weeks, Maria shared her story with friends, co-workers, and even strangers she met online. People were inspired, writing to her about how they, too, wanted to spread kindness in their own lives. Some donated to local charities, others volunteered their time, and many just took a moment to help a neighbor or friend in need. George, too, became a quiet hero in his own right. He started a small community group called Neighbors Helping Neighbors, aimed at providing groceries and support to elderly residents living alone. The group grew steadily, fueled by people inspired by Maria's initial act of kindness and George's willingness to keep the chain going. One afternoon, Maria visited George's apartment to drop off some homemade cookies. He greeted her at the door, his eyes twinkling. "You know," he said, holding up the cookies, "these remind me of why we keep doing what we do. It's not about recognition or repayment. It's about connection, about showing people that they matter." Maria nodded, feeling the truth in his words. She realized that the ripple effect of one simple choice, choosing to help a stranger, could extend far beyond what she could have ever imagined. Kindness, she thought, was like planting seeds. You may not always see how they grow, but eventually, they blossom into something beautiful, touching lives in ways you can't predict. In that moment, standing in George's cozy kitchen, Maria felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the chance to make a difference, gratitude for the connections forged, and gratitude for the reminder that kindness is never wasted. It doesn't matter how small or simple the act is, what matters is the intention behind it and the humanity it restores. As the story spread throughout their town, people began sharing their own acts of kindness on social media, often tagging Maria or George, or using hashtags like #KindnessMatters and #PayItForward. Local newspapers picked up the story, celebrating the ordinary people whose extraordinary hearts had made a difference. Maria's small gesture, motivated by empathy and compassion, had sparked a movement in her own community, but perhaps the most important lesson came in the quiet moments, when Maria and George reflected on everything that had happened. They realized that kindness doesn't just make life better for the people we help, it makes us better, too. It reminds us of our shared humanity, our ability to care, and the profound impact even the simplest choices can have. Maria often tells the story now to friends and neighbors, not to boast, but to inspire. "Kindness isn't complicated," she says. "It's about noticing someone who needs a hand, and then being willing to offer it. It can be as small as a smile, a note, or a loaf of bread. But trust me, it changes lives." George, too, shares the message with everyone he meets. "Don't wait for big opportunities to help," he says. "Every day, you'll meet someone who could use a little kindness. And when you give it, you might just change their world and your own." The story of Maria and George reminds us that kindness is contagious. It doesn't matter where you come from, how much you have, or how busy your life is. Everyone has the power to make the world a little brighter for someone else. And sometimes, that single act of compassion, like paying for someone's groceries, can ripple outward in ways that melt hearts, build communities, and restore faith in humanity. So, the next time you see someone struggling or feeling alone, remember Maria and George. Remember that small acts of kindness can grow into something extraordinary. And remember that the world, despite its challenges, is full of people ready to help, care, and love, one simple gesture at a time, because at the end of the day, it's not the grand gestures that define us, but the quiet, heartfelt choices we make to be kind to one another. And sometimes, those choices can truly change lives forever.